So what we're going to talk about is we're looking at a sort of a new concept. It's a concept that we're putting together at DMEA that looks at ways that we can actually get renewable energy more in the mix of what we produce, but more importantly, that we can look for our local resources. How do we tap our local resources for electricity here at DMEA? We've coined a new sort of branding for this. We call it the Local Power Partnership. And what we have done is we've looked at various resources that are in our service territory. How many people know where the service territory is? Where do we serve? What counties? Delta and Montrose, right? That was a trick question. So actually, folks, you're welcome to come in and sit down. If you'd like to sit through this, you get a chance to win that TV at the end of the show this year. What we did was we started out with our Community Solar Array program. Has anybody heard of the Community Solar Array program? You did. Anybody here happen to sign up for the Community Solar Array program? Very good. Oh, I thought we had someone did. You want to? Okay, well, in brief, the way that program works is we've installed an array at our Montrose facility and at our Delta facility. These are what we hope are the start of what's going to be a lot more local solar power. And the way it's available is you can lease a portion of this array. It's very similar to as if you net meter at your own home, if you're familiar with net metering. So if you installed solar at your own home, you would feed the electricity back through your meter. What this does is it meters those individual arrays. The portion or percentage that you've leased, it takes the kilowatt hours that those arrays have produced, it converts that into a dollar credit. That dollar credit then goes onto your bill. So it's a way to get the same benefits as net metering, but you participate in a little bit larger economy of scale in terms of the construction. That is sort of the cornerstone, if you will, of our local power partnership. We have that particular resource that we've started. Just so you know, detail about the program, it still has capacity available. We're a little more than halfway through of what was available. So if you're interested, keep your eyes and ears open. There's certainly more opportunity at any time. As long as we have capacity, you can sign up. You can sign up for as little as $10. It's a one-time payment. If you want to sign up for $10,000, and we've had someone do that, that's a one-time payment. You get 25 years of benefit. And that benefit is the electricity that's produced. So that's the first cornerstone. We have some other resources that we're looking at developing that will add to what we call this local power partnership. So we're looking both to the town of Hotchkiss and the town of Cedar Edge because they happen to have, a little over 20 years ago, they installed some hydroelectric generators at both of the water plants. So the raw water line that comes into the town, it's under pressure, it can produce hydroelectricity. Now these are relatively small generators. We're talking in Hotchkiss, it's a 60 kilowatt generator. How many kilowatts would you think you'd need to run, let's say, a typical home? How many? 5, good guess, right around there. If you look at the average consumption of DMEA service territory, it's between 4 and 5. Now, it was a guess, it was a good one. Actually, probably, you know, if you get right down to it, if people would do just a little bit of energy conservation measures, some energy efficiency, they could easily drop into that 3.5 kilowatt range, which would save them money, lower the purchase power costs. As you guys know, we're a cooperative. We're not a utility that's for profit. It would help you, it would help us, be a good thing. Anyway, I digress. So what we've got is a 60 kilowatt generator. We're on the verge of having that up and running. By the end of this month, maybe middle of March, I hope to have that thing up and running. We've tested it already, we're doing some upgrades, but because it's on the raw water line, it's a resource that would be available potentially 24 hours a day throughout the year. Now most generation capacity you don't think of as being available 365 days a year because, why? Weather for solar. Lack of water could be. In this case, though, the town of Hotchkiss, water all the time. So even let's take the one in the town of Hotchkiss. Runs all the time, water's always flowing. Why would we not necessarily be able to generate all every day? We'll use it. We'll definitely use it. It's only 60 kilowatts. Maintenance, right? So what we do in the electric generation world is we plan for a certain percentage of the time that units will be down for maintenance. So when we look for local resources that we can generate electricity from, these are the things we have to keep in mind. Cedar Edge has a 100 kilowatt facility, definitely a lot farther away from being up and running. We want to get Hotchkiss going first and then talk to the town of Cedar Edge. So we have solar and hydro. 2 local resources. Then we have a little bit what we consider a large project, what the utility industry considers to be actually a fairly small hydro project. How many people have heard of us talking about doing hydroelectricity on the South Canal? Have you heard of it? So the South Canal is an irrigation canal that takes water through the Gunnison Tunnel from the Gunnison River into our valley and provides irrigation water and some domestic water to the Uncompahgre Valley. That actually has the potential. We've looked at the whole canal, and we've got as much as probably 10 megawatts that we could develop. We are in the process of, it's a Bureau of Reclamation facility, so we're in the process right now of going through what they call their lease of power privilege application and negotiation. Starting today, there's an RFP out on the website for engineering companies and design build firms to bid on the project. We're also going through what's called the NEPA process, which is the environmental compliance that you have to demonstrate. The fact that it's an existing canal means that that's probably a relatively simple thing compared to typical environmental demonstrations or compliance that you have to demonstrate, I should say. At what we're looking at right now is about 6 megawatts of capacity that will develop in this first phase. That's 2 different powerhouses all along the canal. If you look on the screen, that picture down in the lower right is actually one of the drops at the South Canal that we intend to put a powerhouse on. So 6 megawatts. How many houses do you think that would serve? How many? 600's close, but it's more. How many? 1,000? Still more. 5,000, a little less. Close. That would be a maximum. Probably be fair to say about 3,000, but as many as 5 under certain circumstances. This gentleman's ready to come to work for DMEA, I can tell. So what do we talk? We've talked solar, we've talked micro hydro, and now small hydro. These are all resources right here in the Delta and Montrose County areas. So then we looked at, okay, we've got other resources, right? Solar, hydro, we've got biomass. And when I say biomass, what does that mean to you guys? Corn and wheat, although we would typically prefer to use those as food sources, but the waste that comes from that crop, what we consider crop waste. Dairy, of course, absolutely. In fact, dairy manure from the cows. What else?
You should put like a solar panel in a waterfall, and then when it suns, it will make energy.
So combining solar and water is certainly a way to keep renewable energy sustained, but when we talk biomass, we're actually not talking sun and water. But your idea is a good one, for sure. The other one is forest waste products. So we do some logging around this area still, and we have a lot of this beetle kill timber that the Forest Service is actually looking at having people come and log. There's a lot of product that's associated with that, not necessarily taking the logs and burning that wood, but turning that into what we call value-added product, and the waste that would come from that, sawdust, trim ends, those kinds of things. So we've actually looked, a couple years ago, Intermountain, the local sawmill, looked at doing a 10 megawatt facility. Now that perhaps happened to not come through. We were looking for some grant funding on that. It didn't come through, but it is actually one of the resources that we have that potentially has a great deal of power. Yes, ma'am?
Why didn't the wafer board release their own?
Great question. So why didn't the LP plant, the wafer board plant, ever take and become a co-generator? Well, there's a lot of reasons it may not have, and I never asked them specifically why they didn't. But they actually, because they chipped the wood, they had very little byproduct. They actually...
They talked about heating up the schools in Louisiana or wherever the other plant is.
Well, and it is interesting. You can generate more heat than you can electricity. Because when you burn it just for heat, for space heat, it can be at a much lower temperature. When you've got to get to what we call superheated steam to be able to generate. Now there is another alternative that's getting developed now. There are some people in Olathe that have looked at that, and that's taking the wood waste and what we call anaerobically digesting it. It creates a methane gas in that process. Then you burn the methane to go ahead and create the steam generation, or you burn it directly in a natural gas turbine. A generator, really, a piston engine. I said turbine, it would be a piston engine. So there's some new options that are available now that weren't available. They were available and known, but they weren't commercially available some 10 years ago. So there could be a variety of reasons. But it was, potentially it was a candidate. And if you coupled that biomass source with, say, an Intermountain Energy sawmill and with, or Intermountain Resources, excuse me, sawmill, and with some of the crop waste, then you start looking at total energy value that's available. Then the next hurdle is getting it transported to a location where it can be used. But that is certainly one of the benefits we look at. So we're looking at local resources, solar, hydro, biomass, and then any other process that could create a waste product that could be essentially converted into heat. That would be the real issue. So what we'll do in the future, what we look at doing as we move forward is, we've got the solar array, we're looking at a potentially a local green power tariff that would take power that's generated from local resources, and we would ask our membership, do you guys want to support this power instead of us going outside and buying the power from Tri-State? We would have to find out what the public wants, what our membership wants, but in essence what we're looking at is, if it's the same cost or slightly higher, in some cases maybe lower, would our membership support that? Is that what they would want? And that's what our local green power tariff would be. A lot of these resources, at least as we initially develop them, might be slightly more cost to that electricity. It might be, and we don't know. Would our membership want to support that? The other hurdle we have there is, we do have a contract with Tri-State, and Tri-State only lets us, under that terms of that contract currently, produce so much of our own power. So as we continue to develop our local power partnership program, we're going to have to look at talking to Tri-State about the contract. Pardon?
There might be a time you could sell back to Tri-State too, and that'd be a good partnership.
It is a great point. So the gentleman says we could also sell back to Tri-State, and there are policies at Tri-State that do that. However, economically, it's better for DMEA and our members if we can just sell that power directly to them.
But is that in direct competition to your shares for the solar array?
So is that in direct competition to our shares for the solar array? Well, we think of it as not. We think of it as two options. So if you are someone who wants local power, and you see the benefits of local power, which I've listed here, I think the biggest one, frankly, is the benefit to the local economy. If we look at DMEA and purchase power costs has around, in round numbers, about $40 million a year that goes to Tri-State. If we can keep a portion of that in our local economy, that could be huge.
The best selling point for that, when you transmit power, the loss is substantial. If you can go to a local grid, you're
Absolutely.
the environment, and also you get the power to the people.
Absolutely. So the gentleman says one of the best benefits of local power is there are losses when you transmit it. So where's our closest coal-fired power plant to Montrose and Delta counties? You guys didn't know it was going to be a test today, did you? You would have studied if you knew. So there's one in Craig, which is not necessarily the closest in proximity, but the closest large one. The one in west end of Montrose County, which is the closest in proximity, I believe. There used to be one right in town that we get power from. And when you look at the transmission losses, the losses associated with running that electricity from the plant where it's generated to the point of use, they are, this gentleman said, substantial. If you compare it to other transportation sources for energy, electricity is very efficient, actually. About 5 to 8% losses. And there's a reason for that. So you can hold a fluorescent tube under a power line and light it up. It depends on the power line. It's a high voltage power line that you can do that, because there's an electromagnetic field associated with the higher voltage power line. So the higher the voltage, the more efficient the transmission, and yet there is this effect. But the main point, of course, is absolutely correct, which is if you can produce it locally, there are fewer transmission losses. So it's a gain there. It's better. It's a more economical utilization of the resource. Environmental too. You can transmit at lower voltages, and some people feel that there's an adverse impact to an EMF, an electronic field. And in essence, there's even some other benefits. I think you look at, if you wanted to take wood waste, for example, because you have the ability to use that in the West End, Montrose County's West End plant, but the transportation cost to get that wood waste over there versus what you do locally. It makes a much more economic utilization of the resource is really what it does. So when we look at it, one of the things that I think that I want to emphasize most to our membership is, if you are so inclined to want a local resource, we want to be able to offer that to you. If you're inclined to want a renewably responsible resource, that we have solar, we have hydro, we have biomass. If you're an environmentally oriented sort, we have that. So the community solar array might be something that someone would participate in, versus we actually have some projects that have been contemplated that are looking at taking the methane that is vented out of the coal mines, which is currently environmentally quite detrimental, and turning that into a collection system using that methane to generate electricity. I mean, there's a lot of resources locally that we could tap. Ultimately, the biggest benefit that I think it brings, and the thing that I think is most powerful when you make the argument for doing local power, is $40 million a year in round numbers go out of this community to purchase power that we then sell to our membership. If we kept 10% of that here, that's $4 million that we could keep in the economy. So in terms of what you support, if it's the coal mines, I hope that in the future we have locally generated electricity that can support that. If it's green energy, our community solar array, we can certainly continue to expand that. If you like natural resource industries, such as agriculture and forest products, I think we have the potential to develop that resource too. So in a nutshell, that is what we're about. We're about taking some local resources as effectively and responsibly as we can, converting that into local electricity that is generated and available to you, and ultimately, what I envision, we're still working on this program, but what I envision is it's going to be your consumer dollars that tell us which programs that you want to see expanded and supported. Any questions? I'll take them now.
The thing I like about this is the fact that you will develop where the energy producers are at a standstill because they're in the mode to make money from stock. You're not in that, so you can take some of your money and put it into research and development and keep you ahead of the curve. I like that.
I agree with you. So the gentleman says what he likes is we are in a mode where we can develop that energy and get it out to our grid, our local grid, and since we're a nonprofit organization, we can reinvest that into researching some other technologies. And we can reinvest in a lot of ways. We are currently working with some local people in agriculture and the Colorado State University Extension Office. And we're looking at, okay, how can we take some of the crop waste, some of this oil seed production that they're investigating doing it, and turning cow manure is another one, absolutely, and turning that into a useful resource. And if we give them that, we can pay them for the power that comes generated off that, much in the same way we would have paid Tri-State. But if that becomes a revenue stream to a local effort, then it may not be us doing the research. But if the Colorado State University people are and the local agricultural people are, fantastic. You know, it is a wonderful aspect of it. I think that local economic impact is the most powerful part of it for sure.